Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, FPL Consult here, and in today's video we have my Game Week 16 team selection, and there's so much to cover in today's video because FPL have just revealed the mystery chip that we've been waiting for since the start of the season, where they said there was going to be a mystery chip revealed towards the end of the year. That time has come and they have revealed the chip to be an assistant manager chip, so more on that later on at the end of the video, and also some of my initial thoughts surrounding that. But as usual for the team selection, I'll just quickly go through how I did for Game Week 15 before we jump into my team selection for the upcoming Game Week. So if you guys do enjoy today's video, please do drop a like, please do subscribe as well. And let's start off with a review of Game Week 15, which seems like an age ago now. But I did get a very small green arrow from 187k up to 150k. So I'm very pleased with that because actually if you look at my team, the only people that returned was my captain, which is Cole Palmer for 18 points. He came in with a really massive haul, so 36 points for him after the captaincy. And thereafter, there was only two other players who returned. Rico Lewis, who scored a goal, and then after that got sent off later on, so his total tally was 4 points, so not that many points scored for him as well. And then William Saliba, who has been an absolute legend for my team and pretty much carrying it, because had it not been for his goal, I think I'd be sitting on a red arrow of some sort, maybe a small-ish red arrow. But I do just feel like Saliba has really come good since the time I brought him in, so I'm pleased with that. I am a little bit concerned about Gabriel in terms of his injury, etc., so I'll speak about that later on. But because Gabriel missed out, Aina came in for a 1-pointer. Aside from that, you look at the rest of my team, it's pretty much 1-pointers and 2-pointers. Disappointing from Verbruggen because he could have kept a clean sheet against Leicester, but towards the last 5 minutes he conceded 2 goals. So not only was the clean sheet wiped, he also got a -1 point for conceding 2 goals. So very disappointing there. In midfield, Semenyo, Saka and Rogers all came away with nothing. Saka actually had the ball put in the back of the net against Fulham, but that was ruled for offside because Martinelli, who crossed the ball to Saka, was offside in the build-up, right? And thereafter, up front, Cunha, Jackson, João Pedro all blanked. In fact, I transferred Chris Wood out for João Pedro for this particular Leicester fixture, and of course Chris Wood goes on to score and tell me that I made a mistake transferring him out, and thereafter João Pedro also blanks in this game. So it is what it is. When I think about it overall as well, the past moves that I've made over the last few game weeks, including the move to sell Mbumo for Saka back in kind of game week 13 or 14, and also to do Isak to Jackson, those moves have really kind of backfired a little bit, I guess, because those players, Mbumo and Isak, have been scoring the points since I transferred them out, and Saka and Jackson just have been blanking since I brought them in. So maybe it's classic FPL, I don't know, we'll see. But I think moving forward, the long-term fixtures for Saka and Jackson, they do look very good. So over the long haul, I still do think like they will continue to return, but just a bit bummed that the players I transferred out have done so well of late. So there we go for Game Week 15. I'm still happy enough to be set on the green arrow after only 3 players return. So 62 points takes me to a total of 954 points. So hopefully we'll break into the kind of 1,000 point barrier for the Game Week 16. And let's now have a look at my team selection for Game Week 16, the transfer thoughts that I have, and also how I'm likely to set up. So for Game Week 16, this is how my team is lining up. I haven't made any transfers yet so far, but I do think like I could be using the one free transfer that I have for this week, potentially on a defender transfer. So we'll start off in goal here with Verbruggen against Crystal Palace at home. Definitely prefer him over Flecken for this week. I do hope that Brighton moving forward will keep a couple of clean sheets because there was obviously some extra investment put into the keepers, an extra 0.5 in fact, to go for Verbruggen and Flecken as my keeper pairing back in Game Week 6 so that I could rotate them. So hopefully the investment comes good, because this extra 0.5 could have actually been in my bank, and thereafter maybe I could have upgraded someone like Rico Lewis to Virgil van Dijk, for example. So because of this keeper pairing, I have now 1.6 million in the bank. It's not enough to do moves like Rico Lopez to Virgil van Dijk or Trent Alexander-Arnold, right? So more on that later on. But I think in terms of the defenders I have in my starting 11 first, it's Saliba, Aina, and Gabriel. So Aina against Aston Villa at home, I actually don't think this is that bad of a fixture for Aina because firstly, Aston Villa just played in the Champions League. Nottingham Forest defensively are very strong as well, and they're playing at the City ground. So I do think like I quite favor Aina for this fixture. So it's Saliba and Gabriel alongside him on his left and right, playing Everton at home. Now, obviously, that's a great fixture, but the issue here is that Gabriel is nursing a bit of an injury that seems to be keeping him out longer than we expect. And there's not really any concrete news that we got on Gabriel. So the thing is, he's missed out in Game Week 15. He's also missed out in the Champions League. So my guess right now is that I don't think he will be in a position to start in Game Week 16, which obviously brings a bit of doubt as to whether I should kind of make a defender transfer. So looking at my bench, I have Rico Lewis last on the bench because he's currently serving his suspension for 2 yellow cards that he got in Game Week 15. Aside from that, there's Greaves as well, and he obviously was left out of the squad. He wasn't even on the bench in Game Week 15 because Kieran McKenna just basically doesn't believe in having centre backs on the bench, which absolutely baffles me. So in terms of having, I guess, good enough replacements on the bench, I don't think either of them, Greaves or Rico Lopez, can come in nicely for Gabriel. So given that I do think Gabriel is likely going to miss out, I think the annoying thing is also that I don't really know the time frame of when Gabriel is going to come back. And knowing Arteta, I don't think he's going to be as transparent with us as to the injury time frame of kind of the players as compared to other managers like Postecoglou, for example, who's very clear as to how long it probably take for the player to recover. So it is a bit annoying. For the time being, the plan is still to keep Gabriel. I obviously could do moves like Gabriel to Van Dijk or Gabriel to Trent, but I think the moment Gabriel is fit, I would want him back for the run that Arsenal have moving forward. It's very good for a very long period of time, so I don't want to go without Gabriel, especially with how all the set pieces are centered around him. So I think for the time being, I'm keeping Gabriel, in which case it just comes down to who of Greaves and Rico Lewis I would sell. And I think for the time being, it's likely going to be Rico Lewis that is the one I kind of sell if I do make that move in Game Week 16 now. Because firstly, Man City just don't look very good. And obviously, Rico Lewis is a player that is not 100% guaranteed for minutes. And he is obviously a player that costs much more than Greaves, so I can get to a much more expensive defender, coupled with the money I have in the bank, instead of selling Greaves. So I do think like Greaves is still a kind of a bench fodder that I would have in the on the bench, but Rico Lewis is likely going to leave the team. So in terms of replacements for Rico Lewis, I really only am considering two. So the first one is Levi Colwill from Chelsea. The run that they have is very, very good. Brentford at home in Game Week 16 is good enough. Not that I think they would keep a clean sheet immediately, but I think it's good enough that it's at Stamford Bridge. So firstly, going for Levi Colwill, as a pick, I think he's one of the more nailed Chelsea defenders. The only issue I have is that you would remember the midweek game in December, earlier in December, where kind of the Chelsea team just or Enzo Maresca, I should say, rotated 7 players in the starting 11 down to the bench and brought in 7 new players. So he basically did a overhaul of the squad for the midweek game in the Premier League. And in that kind of rotation, it saw Levi Colwill drop down to the bench. And Chelsea have many, many defenders to choose from. So I do think like because that is a possible that is a possibility for kind of the fixture crunch that we have in December, I do have a bit of doubt as to whether Levi Colwill is going to play every single game. Not that it puts me off massively, and I do think like he's the more likely one that I will move for now in Game Week 16 if I'm really forced to. If we get news, if we don't hear anything about Gabriel, then it's more likely I make the move. But the real kind of defender that I want to go for, who is really the only second option I'm looking at, is Anthony Robinson from Fulham. So Fulham has been looking really, really good. And I think in terms of Anthony Robinson as a pick, he does not only rely on clean sheets. Now, Fulham moving forward have really good home fixtures. So, in fact, I think clean sheets could be in store for them. You saw how at home at Craven Cottage they held Arsenal to a draw 1-1. So, they were very solid defensively. And I think for him as well, with the assist threat that he has, he's put up very good XA numbers over the course of the first 15 game weeks. I think he is the next kind of player that I think over the next few game weeks could do really well. So I want to jump on Anthony Robinson, but the only issue I have now is that he plays Liverpool away. So that's not ideal, and I don't think it's a move that has a lot of upside if I make it this week. But if you fast forward to game week 17, I do think like it is pretty much a no-brainer that I would prefer Anthony Robinson over someone like Levi Colwell as a replacement for Rico Lewis. So there's a bit of a predicament that I have now in terms of defenders, but the ideal scenario, of course, is that we hear something about Gabriel and I don't have to make any moves and I can reassess in game week 17. So that's the defender situation that I'm at the moment. Other picks that I think maybe could make it in as a Rico Lewis replacement for me, someone like Kyrgios or Lewis Hall, for example. But honestly speaking, I'm only strongly considering Colwell and Anthony Robinson. Now, in midfield, it's Semenyo, Saka, Salah, and Palmer. Now, Semenyo has West Ham at home. It's a great fixture for him, but he has obviously seen less and less returns of late. I'm not too worried because the fixtures moving forward are still good for him, but I need to see something from him moving forward. If not, there are still very good kind of cheap options out there in FPL right now, like Ahmad, Enzo Fernandez, and also Alex Iwobi that a lot of us are looking at. So Semenyo will have to start pulling his weight. As for Saka, Salah, and Palmer, again, really not too much to discuss there, and it's more about captaincy because all of them have great fixtures. Saka has Everton at home, Salah has Fulham at home, and Palmer has Brentford at home. So, for the time being, in terms of captaincy, I think I'm leaning towards Cole Palmer, but I will speak more about captaincy in our algorithm section towards the end of the video as well. Now, in terms of the forwards, it's Cunha, Jackson, and João Pedro. Now, all of them, again, have very good fixtures. It's Ipswich at home, Brentford at home for Jackson, and then Crystal Palace at home for João Pedro. This was always going to be the intended setup where I had two slightly cheaper forwards and then a slightly more expensive one. Now, obviously, it's looking as if Isak is the flavor, I guess, of the later game weeks that we've seen, where he's done better than Jackson. But I actually have a gut feel, I guess, that Jackson is someone that is biding his time and he will start to come good. And against Brentford at home, who have been very leaky, I do think like he could be getting something. So hopeful with Jackson here. Cunha is someone that has been disappointing of late. So is Wolves as well. So he's definitely someone on the chopping block. And I could very well just reverse the move later on in maybe 17 or 18, where I just sell Cunha when his fixtures turn and go for Chris Wood again. So a bit of a, I don't know, selling Chris Wood and buying him back again. But I always knew that Chris Wood was going to be a good option regardless. I just felt as if I wanted to free up money for this game week. So that was why I brought João Pedro in last week. And this week he has Crystal Palace at home. So hopefully again he gets something. In terms of looking at my team overall, transfer plans wise, aside from the defender transfers that I've already spoken about, I think the more likely transfer, the more exciting transfers that I have lined up is actually, as I've mentioned, either Cunha to Wood, or if I could afford it, Cunha to Isak. Or another kind of area that I could improve my squad is actually either one of Semenyo or Rogers. More likely Rogers out for someone like Ahmad, Alex Iwobi, or Enzo Fernandez. So those are not moves I'll be doing this week. The only move I'm considering this week is whether I want to make a defender transfer or not and sell Rico Lewis. Aside from that, I think this team is fine. And I think I'm probably going to go with something like this. It's really just that Gabriel position that I'm worried about. So haven't made any moves yet. I'll confirm it closer to the deadline. Hopefully we get more news. I don't think we get from Arteta, but maybe some training pictures to give me a bit of confidence there. But we'll see about Gabriel, though it's not looking good. Now, let's have a look at the captaincy algorithm before we jump into the mystery chip discussion. So looking at the Game Week 16 Captaincy Algorithm, for those of you new to this, it is basically a mini segment on the team selection series where we have a look at the algorithm points for the different kind of players in FPL, and we list the top 3 and we label the best one as the Game Week 16 Captaincy Algorithm pick. So for this week, it is on Palmer with 8.15 algorithm points. Salah follows behind with 7.38 algorithm points, and Haaland with 6.93. So for those of you interested in how this is calculated, is basically a weighted average value of the predicted points for these players from 3 different sources. We basically weight it according to how reliable these sources are in terms of giving us predicted points, and thereafter we pick a captain. And in terms of success rate wise, the algorithm has done pretty well. 12 out of the last 15 game weeks, they have picked a good captain in terms of one that returns and also one that scores decently among the kind of top 3 picks that we have. So the success rate metric is basically a comparison of how this captain scores among the top 3, and also kind of individually he has to return, of course. So in terms of Game Week 16 again, it's Palmer. And I think looking at the kind of direct comparison, because I only have Palmer and Salah, I don't really have Haaland in my team. So it's Palmer against Brentford or Salah against Fulham. So I think there are cases for both of these players for sure. I mean, both of them are premiums and they could do very well in their respective games. But what I would say about Palmer is that he's playing a very leaky defense. And of late, Palmer has also been very, very good, putting up very decent numbers. Fair to say that the past few, I guess, returns that Palmer have had, we have been quite fortunate as Palmer owners, because there was 2 penalties against Spurs, and then there was also an assist for Enzo where he actually kind of took a shot and it was deflected, and thereafter Enzo kind of finished off after that. So I do think like there was some element of luck in terms of Palmer's recent returns, but you could obviously argue the other side of the coin where you pick penalty takers, or you're paying the premium of about, I guess, 10.9 right now, Palmer, for those penalties. So I think he's definitely someone that is a massive captaincy shout this week, but I don't actually think it is so much different, or the gap is actually so big from Palmer to Salah, because Salah's all the way down at 7.38. When you compare to Palmer, it is almost 0.8 more than Salah. So I think Salah in his own right is a very great captain as well for this week, in terms of him playing at home and the Fulham defense having Joachim Anderson, who's still injured, and then Kevin Bassey as well, who is currently suspended. So there's lots of narratives that you can spin it around, but I think both of them will do very well this week. My captain for Game Week 16 is likely going to be on Palmer, but we'll see where I land in terms of my captaincy closer to the deadline. There will obviously be a deadline stream, so let's see where I end up. But I'm keen to know where you guys are looking for captaincy. If you have any of these top 3 players, which one are you favoring? Let me know down in the comments below. And if not, let's now have a bit of a quick discussion, because it's only been a few days that the mystery chip has been revealed. So let's have a bit of initial thoughts and discussion on the assistant manager chip. So if you haven't heard yet, FPL have now revealed the mystery chip that they have been teasing since the start of the season, and has been now revealed to be an assistant manager chip. So I'm going to list out a couple of pointers here before I go into what I think about this chip and how I feel it would impact my own chip strategy for my team. So obviously this is just initial thoughts and probably going to be a bit of a ramble, but hopefully it is still useful for you guys. So we'll start off with how the chip works. For those of you who have already heard and know how the chip works, you can fast forward to kind of my thoughts on the chip. But just very quickly, for those who haven't heard about it yet, you get to pick a Premier League manager for 3 consecutive game weeks. What I did not include here is that you can only start using this chip from game week 24 onwards. And once you pick this Premier League manager, this chip will be active for 3 consecutive game weeks. It does not matter when you use it. The moment after game week 24, you can use it in any consecutive 3 game weeks. Now, in terms of the general ruling around getting a manager into your squad, they count towards the maximum 3 players per club. So what it means is essentially you can't have Arne Slot as your manager and also Salah, Trent, and Van Dijk, for example. You can only have 2 other outfield players if you pick Arne Slot as your manager. Now, how much they will cost? Around 0.5 to 1.5. My expectation is that the kind of big 6 teams would have their managers costing much more, and probably the top bracket there, 1.5 million. And the downside is that these funds come from your existing budget. So that is really, I guess, something that requires a bit of planning, because if you don't do, I guess, the sufficient planning around when you want to use the assistant manager chip, you could be faced in a situation where you want to use the chip, but you don't have enough money. You're forced to downgrade a player. Say, for example, you downgrade Isak to João Pedro, right? Just to free up the funds to get Arne Slot, right? So something that you have to think about is also the funds surrounding this, which is again not ideal, but I guess another dynamic of this chip that FPL have decided to implement there. It's not great in terms of team value for those who are trying to catch up. So I think this would likely be a case where it favors those who has more team value existing in their squad already. Now, in terms of the point scoring wise, this is where it gets a little bit more exciting. Now, if the manager that you pick, his team wins, you get 6 points. A draw wins you 3 points or gets you 3 points. Every goal scored gets you 1 point, and a clean sheet means 2 points. Now, when you look overall as well, these kind of metrics already, just on its own, without the bonuses, which we'll speak about in a bit, already point to the fact that this could be a very high potential chip, because 6 points for a win, and then every goal you get 1 point and you keep a clean sheet. So essentially, if Liverpool win 3-0, you would get 6 points for the win. You will get 3 points for each. So 3 points because 1 for each goal, and then you will get 2 points for the clean sheet. So that's already kind of 11 points. So that is one game. There's many games to go. You could use this in a double game week. So potentially it could add up quite a bit, right? So already from this kind of analysis alone, I do think like it could be a very high potential chip. Now you consider the bonus. You get an extra 10 points if your manager wins a team ranked at least 5 places higher, and you get an extra 5 points if your manager draws a team that is ranked at least 5 places higher. So essentially, this is an underdog rule, where if you pick an underdog manager, you will kind of gain more points if that manager ends up winning the team that they're playing against. Now, I do think like this is where there's greater gains to be made, and when you're looking at the upside to this chip, I think if we are chasing towards the end of the season, this could very well be a way that we kind of gain ground against, you know, the kind of template moves that people would make, right? And then lastly, you can transfer managers for the 3 game week window. It will cost you free transfers, but you don't necessarily have to stick with one manager. You can go from Arne Slot to Eddie Howe the next week and Postecoglou in the last week. Like, it's all possible, right? So with all these kind of functionalities of the chip discussed, I think in terms of initial thoughts wise, firstly, when I consider all the chips, this is one of the highest potential chips among all that we will have remaining in kind of our chip basket. So for my own team, I will have the wild card from kind of GW20 onwards as the second wild card. I will also have the assistant manager chip, and I will have the bench boost and the free hit. My triple captainship has already been used. So when I consider all these 4 chips that I just listed, the assistant manager chip feels to me like the one with the highest potential, followed by, okay, maybe close to the wild card. I would rank these 2 closely, but definitely the bench boost and also the free hit is not as great in terms of the potential to return more points than these chips that I've ranked high, which is assistant manager chip and the wild card. I say this because the assistant manager chip really has the potential to gain you easily around 40 to kind of, 60 points if you play it well and if you kind of time the use of it. And obviously it will involve a huge amount of luck, but I do think like there is a lot of points to be gained with this particular chip. So I do think like strategy wise moving forward, it will be a case where I plan the game week that I want to use this chip first before I look at the surrounding game weeks of when I want to play my other chips. And you can be sure that using the Assistant Manager chip and including one double game week in one of those 3 consecutive game weeks is going to be the play that many people will go for. What I mean by this is that for now, game week 33 is likely going to be a double game week. There is a very popular window popping up where people think that they want to use the System Manager chip in 31, 32, and 33. So in 33, they would catch that double game week as well. So essentially, you get 4 games for your manager chip, right? So I think that will be popular. But what I will also say is that I'm not going to kind of pigeonhole myself into wanting to use that chip only in that kind of a way. I think there is so many different ways that we can play the chip. If we go kind of underdog style, then using it slightly earlier is better, because if you favor the underdogs and you think someone like Manchester United, who are now quite low on the table, will end the season in maybe the top 4, then I think now is the time when you should be backing them. And then obviously you'll be gaining those extra 10 points for the bonus, for the bonus if Ruben Amorim wins a team ranked at least 5 places high. So you get my point. There's many different ways to play it. I'm not going to lock it in yet. It's too early right now. But I will say for sure that this is going to be a chip that I plan around, and it's going to be one where I'm going to have to assess the fixtures, and it's also something that I'm sure the FPL community as a whole will be doing moving forward. So there'll be much more content on this, but about how you can maximize the fixtures to kind of pair it with this chip and thereafter work around the other chips that you have as well. So that's kind of my initial thoughts and also kind of how the manager chip works. Hopefully it was helpful for you guys. And let me know what are your thoughts about the Assistant Manager chip, how you intend to use it. There will be more videos coming out on this particular chip and the strategies that I have for it. But if not, this is my Game Week 16 team selection. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please do drop a like. Please do subscribe as well. And I will catch you guys, as always, 3 hours before the deadline on Saturday. It is a slightly later deadline this week, but I will always be here 3 hours before the deadline. So see you guys there.